Welcome to the Non-Public Schools Rules Revision Overview webinar. My name is Diana Burton, and I am the Director of Non-Public School Programs for the Division of Choice within the Tennessee Department of Education. The department continues to work towards setting all students on a path to success through three strategic priorities: educators, student readiness, and academics. Non-public schools fit nicely under the priority of academics in providing Tennessee families with access to a high-quality education no matter where they live. Today's session will provide an overview of the newly revised State Board rules for the approval and administration of non-public schools. We will begin with a quick review of the non-public school options available to families in Tennessee. Next, we'll cover the reasons the rules needed an update and a timeline of that process. We'll review the specific changes to the rules that have the largest impact across all categories. We'll also cover a few of the changes that affect specific categories and agencies. And finally, we will look ahead at how the changes to the rules will affect annual reporting and monitoring. I will share email contacts at the end of the presentation, so any questions you have about the revised rules can be received. Our team will compile the list of questions and answers from email and any received during the live presentation, and then we will send responses to the questions to all non-public schools and agencies. As a refresher, let's begin by reviewing the non-public options available to families in Tennessee. There are 6 categories of non-public school programs. Categories 1 special purpose, and 5 private schools are approved and monitored by the Tennessee Department of Education. Currently, there are 142 approved schools in these categories. Category 2 schools are approved by an accrediting agency authorized by the State Board of Education. These agencies are approved to accredit in this category for a 5-year term. There are 82 schools in this category. Category 3 schools are approved by a regional accrediting agency as written in state statute. There are 178 schools in this category. Category 4 schools are approved by a church-related membership agency and include schools with homeschool umbrella programs. There are 205 schools approved in this category. And finally, we have independent homeschools, which are approved by the local education agency. All non-public schools are required to submit the names, ages, and addresses of their enrolled students to the Students' LEA of Residence each school year. The districts then compile and report those numbers back to the department. So in December of 2022, we received reports indicating that there were 123,483 non-public school students being served across the state. Homeschooling in Tennessee can be a bit confusing to explain, so let's take a moment to go over those options. The homeschool law provides 2 paths for families to homeschool: independent homeschool and enrollment in a homeschool umbrella. Families may elect to independently homeschool by filing an intent to homeschool form with their local school district. This means that the parent or the legal guardian is the teacher of record and is responsible for meeting all the requirements for conducting and reporting a homeschool. The second option is to enroll their child in a homeschool umbrella or a satellite program through an approved Category 4 private school. Parents may participate as a teacher in the school, and they are subject to the requirements established by that school. The third option listed here is not actually a homeschool option, but a private school option that allows parents to supervise their student from home. These schools are Category 3 accredited online schools, and they must meet the requirements for operating a Category 3 school in Tennessee. I want to make sure that everyone can find our school choice web pages. The department website was recently updated and URLs were changed for specific pages, including non-public and homeschool. You can find us by going to the link at the bottom of the slide. This will take you to the school choice webpage. And then once you're on the school choice webpage, you can find the non-public schools website link and the homeschool link. The homeschool page is currently being updated and should be published in the next few weeks. The non-public page has not been updated yet, but it still contains important information that's useful to schools, and it also houses the approved schools list and the directory data form. This webpage will also receive an overhaul, but it'll be closer to the new rules taking effect, so we can put the most current information on there. Please remember that schools should submit a directory data form to private.schools@tn.gov anytime there are changes to your school's directory information. And please bookmark both pages so you can find them easily. Okay, so now we will switch gears and start discussing the rules revision and the process that led to those current updates. The State Board of Education, in collaboration with the Department of Education, began the process of revising and updating the State Board rules in 2022. We will take a look at that timeline, a timeline of the process on the next slide, but the collaboration also included opportunities for stakeholders to advise and to provide input. Stakeholders included members of the Non-Public Schools Advisory Council, which included homeschool representatives, groupings of non-public school leaders, and accrediting agency representatives. The purpose of the updates were to remove outdated language and also provide clarity for families and schools regarding the requirements of non-public schools in Tennessee. It also provided an opportunity to clarify monitoring requirements. Here is a timeline containing pertinent dates during the revision process. In March and April of 2022, the Department of Education and the State Board of Education began their initial work sessions to draft changes to the rules. In May and June, the drafted rules were shared with the Non-Public School Advisory Council for feedback, and then additional revisions were made at that time. In July, the rules were presented to the State Board of Education for the first reading. In August and September, further collaboration between the board, department, and other stakeholders continued. Those included meetings and feedback sessions with leadership from various non-public schools, school membership agencies, accrediting agencies, advisory council members, including people from the Tennessee Christian Schools Association, Tennessee Association of Independent Schools, and the heads of school for a number of Category 3 schools. The State Board also held a formal rulemaking hearing as required by law that took place on September 15th. To gather additional public comment. The board approved the new rules on final reading on October 28th, and they were sent to the AG's office in the next month. In May, the rules were sent for filing with the Secretary of State's office, and so now here we are, and they will take effect on August 15th of 2023. If you have not had a chance to review the new rules, they can be located by navigating to the State Board's Rules, Policies, and Guidance webpage. The URL is available at the top of this slide. Once you are on the page, click on Rules and then Pending Rules and Policies to find the administrative and the approval process rules, both of which are applicable to non-public schools. If you'd like to compare the revised rules to the current rules, you can go back and select Rules and Regulations rather than Pending Rules and Policies to find the current rules, which are also listed under 0701 and 0702. Okay, let's review the specific changes to the State Board rules for the approval and administration of non-public schools. As we review the updates, please keep in mind that the rules review is not exhaustive. This rules review is not exhaustive, and it focuses on changes impacting the majority of non-public schools and agencies. I encourage everyone to read the revised rules and submit any questions you have to the non-public team. Remember, you will receive contact information at the end of the presentation. As we review the changes, I will specify any that do not impact all 5 categories. So let's get started here. Current rules require kindergarten students to be 5 years old by August 15th to enroll in kindergarten. The new rules allow schools to maintain a testing policy that permits students turning 5 by September 30th to enter kindergarten if the head of school or the principal determines through testing that they are ready. Current rules say that the non-public schools will observe fire safety regulations and procedures promulgated by the Tennessee State Fire Marshal's Office. That stays the same, but the new rules do clarify that this includes participation in an annual inspection for educational occupancy. So there has been some confusion around that, and it is important to note that the inspection needs to be for educational occupancy. Current rules do not require a non-public school to request criminal history checks for staff. The new rules do require these checks for all staff and contractors with access to students. These checks must be fingerprint or social security number based and include checks of the Tennessee and National Sex Offender Registries and the Tennessee Department of Health Abuse Registry. Category 4 schools are not required to conduct criminal history record checks on parent teachers who are instructing their own children. Okay, so depending on the category of the non-public school, the current rules either require schools to maintain the same operating schedule as a public school, or it's not specified. So those are the current rules. The new rules clearly define the operating schedule, and it is the same for all categories. 180 days, 180 instructional days at 6.5 hours with the option to stockpile if the school day is at least 7 hours in length. Stockpiling requires the designation of the stockpile days prior to the start of the school year. Current rules require non-public schools to administer an annual standardized assessment with variations by category, specifically with regard to the subject areas being covered and how the results will be reported and retained. Current rules also require the assessment to be administered in grades 3 through 12. Categories 3 and 4 do not list a specific testing requirement at all. So that's the current rules. The revised rules specify the same testing requirement for all categories except for category 4, which is exempt. The updated rule requires the assessment to be given in grades 3 through 11 rather than 12. Minimally, English language arts and mathematics must be tested. Results of the test must be communicated with parents and teachers and kept in the student's record. The length of time the scores must be retained varies by category. Category 1 schools are required to maintain scores in the student's permanent record. Categories 2, 3, and 5 are required to maintain scores on file for at least 1 calendar year. Categories administering the nationally standardized assessments are permitted to identify alternative assessments for students with significant cognitive disabilities. And then lastly on this slide, current rules specify a number of student enrollees only in category 2. So category 2 right now is the only category that specifies how many students have to be enrolled in the school. The new rules specify that a school must have a minimum of 10 full-time students enrolled. This means 10 active enrollees at the same time. Categories 3 and 4 do not have a minimum number of enrollees specified, but schools would be subject to the requirements of the accrediting or membership agency. All right, current rules allow closing schools to deposit student records in various locations. Okay, the new rules state that closing schools records must be deposited with the local public school system where the non-public school was located. Now, there are some exceptions. An exception to this requirement is if a closing school is merging or consolidating with another school, or if there is a change of ownership. In these cases, the records may be deposited with the continuing school. Categories 2, 3, and 4 shall also send a copy to the accrediting or membership agency if required by that agency. The new rules specify that records can be maintained electronically. Closing schools must notify the director of schools of the local public school system where the school is located and also the department by submitting the closing form on the non-public schools webpage. All right, current schools require closing schools to publish the location of student records in local newspapers. The new rules require closing schools to publish the location of student records in 3 places. 1, the local newspaper. 2, on the school's website, if applicable, if the school has a website. And then 3, through written communication to all parents of enrolled students with a copy submitted to the department. Notifications must occur at least 30 days prior to the school's last day of operation. And then finally on this slide, the transfer rule. So the transfer rule remains the same, stating that students transferring from categories 1, 2, and 3 may do so without a loss of credit. In the new rules, a certified transcript is defined as being sent by the custodian of records to the requesting school with signed certification acknowledging the accuracy of the transcript. The parent must be notified that a transcript is being sent. In addition, the new rules provide guidance to LEAs and public charter schools on receiving transfers from Category 4, 5, and homeschool to public schools. It also notes that parents of homeschool students are authorized to transmit transcripts to any school to which a student transfers. Okay, so as mentioned on the last slide, students from categories 1, 2, and 3 schools can transfer in and among these 3 categories or public schools without a loss of credit. The rules revision specifies certain requirements for these categories of schools. So for categories 1, 2, and 3, the following applies. For staffing and credentials, both teachers and principals in Category 1 and Category 1 special purpose schools must have an active Tennessee teaching license. This does not include Montessori teaching certificates. So teachers that are teaching at a Montessori school and principals teaching at Montessori schools in Category 1 must also be licensed in Tennessee. Categories 2 and 3 require adherence to accreditation agency standards for licensing or credentials. Category 1 and 1 SP schools must evaluate teachers and principals using specific evaluation models as listed in State Board rule. Category 2 and 3 schools can select their own evaluation models and must have procedures in place for evaluating both principals and teachers. And then staffing for all 3 categories must be sufficient to meet the needs of the student body served. This includes the right number of teachers and could include counselors, librarians, special education teachers, or other personnel. Instructional program. For these 3 categories, all 3 must have instructional programs that include ELA, so English Language Arts, math, science, and social studies. Schools are encouraged to offer art, music, health, and physical education, and world languages as well. Each school shall use textbooks and instructional materials that adequately cover all subjects in the school's instructional program. All 3 categories must set graduation requirements so that students earn a minimum of 22 credits, including 4 each for English Language Arts and math, and 3 each for science and social studies. The remaining credits to be determined by the school or accrediting agency. Policies for categories 1, 2, and 3, schools must comply with state and federal laws prohibiting discrimination on the basis of disability, including but not limited to the Americans with Disabilities Act and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. Schools must implement a written policy on promotion and retention. It must be communicated to students and parents in the school's handbook. Class sizes may not exceed the maximums set forth in state law. These are located in Tennessee Code Annotated Section 49.1.104A. Schools must maintain accurate permanent records to include attendance, disciplinary matters, work completed, and promotion or retention determinations. Parents must receive periodic progress reports of student needs and academic progress. Due to the changes to the rules, accrediting and membership agencies for categories 2, 3, and 4 are encouraged to review the revised rules for the applicable category, make note of any new requirements, and begin evaluating the agency's current practices for areas of discrepancy and start planning for necessary changes to the accreditation processes. The non-public team is available to answer any questions related to the changes. Categories 3 and 4 contain several areas of clarification compared to the current rule. Revocation of approval is a new section that explains the department's and the agency's responsibilities when a school or an agency is found to be non-compliant. Because of the changes to the state board rules, the yearly monitoring process will be updated to align with the new rules. As written in the new rules require the department to develop reporting procedures and deadlines for submitting reports. Categories 1, 5, and 4 state-approved non-public schools are also subject to monitoring by the department. Currently, there is only one state-approved Category 4 school, but there could be others in the future. A monitoring guidebook will be published containing the monitoring process, and it will be available on our website once that is finished. Categories 2, 3, and 4 non-public schools are subject to monitoring by the accrediting or membership agency. In the event of potential non-compliance, the department will send notice to the school and the accrediting agency, and the department may conduct a site visit to verify compliance. Accrediting and membership agencies shall publish accreditation policies and a list of all accredited and/or member schools on a publicly available website. Agencies must submit an updated list of all accredited or member schools annually to the department. The department shall be notified of any schools that are added or removed from the agency's list of accredited or member schools list within 10 business days. Now that we have an effective date for the new rules, we will be working on finalizing the new annual reporting processes. All schools approved through the department and a representative from each membership or accrediting agency will submit an annual report through ePlan in the fall. ePlan is the department's online platform for funding applications and monitoring, in case you haven't had any experience with ePlan. Schools approved through the department include, of course, Category 1 special purpose, Category 5, and then the Category 4 state board approved schools. Most schools under Category 4 are approved through a membership agency, but they can apply directly to the state board, and we do have one of those right now. Schools will submit once in the fall and once in the spring. The fall submission will include the bulk of the reporting, and it will be similar to the information currently being collected through email during the annual reporting process. The spring submission will include any updates to the school's directory information, verification that the school is still in compliance, and the school's calendar for the next school year. Each accrediting or membership agency will assign an authorized representative to complete their submission and will complete a fall submission only. 10 to 25% of Category 1 and Category 5 schools may be asked to participate in a Tier 2 monitoring process. This would include schools with compliance concerns possibly, or it could just be some additional schools that are selected to participate, and that's so we can ensure all schools are being monitored on a more regular basis. Tier 2 monitoring will include submission of additional documentation and a virtual or in-person site visit. This process will also be housed in ePlan. Accrediting or membership agencies will have a separate process for issues of noncompliance. This will be published in the monitoring handbook and will align to the new rules. The new reporting process will begin for the 2023-24 school year. Training opportunities will be provided for annual compliance reporting, so please be sure to keep directory information current so the department can communicate these opportunities effectively. This slide contains contact information for the non-public team. Our general email account is private.schools@tn.gov. My email address is diana.burton@tn.gov, and Sandy Couch can be reached at sandy.couch@tn.gov. Please submit any questions you have regarding the new rules to our team using these email addresses. Thank you for taking the time to watch the presentation, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day.